Hello, friends. Let me put in my hearing aid, so to speak. Yeah. All right. I am here today to share with you some written material. Now, it's original written material, and well, partly original, mostly original. But there's a little story here. My friend in Australia, with whom I've been having many interesting discussions, sent me an article or a link to it rather in nexusnewsfeed.com, which is related to Nexus magazine, if you're familiar with that. Anyway, the title of this article is Earth Has Shifted. Inuit elders issue warning to NASA and the world. And it goes on to say some things that have been circulating for a while. What's the date on this article? I don't know that it's dated. Well, yeah, it is. Okay. So source is indianlife.org, January 17th, 2015. So I believe that it's almost 10 years old. Yeah. So uh, there were videos on YouTube about this. But the Inuit elders had spoken and said that the earth has shifted, tilted, or as they put it, wobbled to the north. And they all agree their sky has changed. The elders maintain the sun doesn't rise where it used to. They have longer daylight to hunt, and the sun is higher than it used to be and warms up more quickly than before. The elders who were interviewed across the north all said the same thing. Their sky has changed. So this is old news by now, 10 years old. Has the sky changed more in the following 10 years? I don't know. What kicked off this change? It doesn't really say. It just says what we're seeing now is different than it was in our youth or years ago, right? Maybe months ago. It doesn't really say. So, what to make of this? Old news though it may be. Well, I was stimulated to think about some things related to the subject matter of this channel. And so I'll just read you what I wrote, more or less as I wrote it. And I hope there's some interesting information in here for you. I would like to read my friend's reply, but it wanders into areas that are not exactly related to this subject matter. So he basically says, yeah, I get what you're saying that there's a lot going on Earth, in the solar system, in the galaxy, and beyond. And we don't know what it all is or what it all means. And he says, I'm living my life as I would regardless. And I have a certain amount of admiration for that. And to a large extent, that's all we can do, isn't it? Unless your career, like Dr. Michael Sala's, is exopolitics, or you are the emissary of the Galactic Federation, like Elena Danaan, or you are otherwise very closely connected to the ET related phenomena and the galactic phenomena and the solar system phenomena. And even people in NASA and astronomers are affected by these things to a degree, right? Conventional science. But if we're not in those fields, we're doing software development or massage therapy or hypnosis, whatever it is. There are lots of things. You have a shop, you sell crystal, let's say, or crystals. Anyway, you go about your life. But let me read you what I wrote in response to this article. I think if the kind of wobble mentioned, I'm going to move this down where I can read it more. more effectively. Okay. And oh, well, that's problematic. That's problematic. I've got an issue here. Let's see. I thought this was going to be really easy and it wouldn't interrupt my reading. Okay. Let's see. I think if the kind of wobble mentioned had occurred, the path of the sun, as observed, would have shifted. The zodiac would have moved, and so on. So, as far as I can tell, no. In other words, what the Inuit elders are reporting, with all due respect to them, is not literally true. But there's always the Mandela effect and the impression it has always been this way to consider, or it has not always been this way, right? Either way, that Mandela effect can produce that impression. Or the Mandela effect is a name for the fact that some people have one impression and others have the opposite. The war for Earth's liberation has been, in part, a time war involving time travel and all sorts of subtle and not so subtle changes having been made to the timeline. There have been many timelines, only one in effect in a given instance. Our consciousness has been moved many times from one timeline being shut down to one being newly created or restored. So that is to say, there is only one timeline for Earth in this dimension. But what that timeline is changeable. I know that's difficult to make sense of, but that's the way I understand it. So to go on here, the most recent big shift was effected in October 2024, and the event was in effect caught on video. And there's a link that I sent my friend to watch, which is currently on the fringe. So this video is on the fringe. It's Dr. Michael Sala's video, and his whole channel is on the fringe, right? From the standpoint of the vast majority of people. But, I said, but I wrote, I believe it will one day be seen as an important historical document. So the video I will link in the description for the video, as well as the link to the Nexus newsfeed article. So I go on to mention some evidences of the time war. When Trump won the 2016 election, he whispered something to his wife, who is allegedly a Venusian Tal or Pleiadian and a Galactic Federation agent. What he said was not heard, but his lip movements were clearly seen on camera, clearly visible on camera. An expert lip reader later reported his words to have been something very close to this. If it weren't for your time machine, this wouldn't have been possible. Make of that whatever one will, of course. I also think that Trump's remarkable equanimity and persistence in the face of all the opposition mounted against him in various forms, including the attempts to crush him via lawfare, are not merely results of remarkable personal qualities or character, for which I give him due credit, but also the knowledge and the confidence coming from the knowledge that the Galactic Federation of Worlds has had Trump's his back, and they were working hard. They've been working hard to ensure that he would emerge from all that evil manipulation and machination against him, relatively unscathed, and as the election winner in 2024. Fiddling with the timeline was a major part of what the GFW were doing. I don't know if you're familiar with the lore related to Project Looking Glass, which involved technology developed based on information given to George Van Tassel by Pleiadians. And Van Tassel and his team developed this technology based on their information a few decades ago. Van Tassel described the people who gave them the information and said that they were Pleiadians. So the way I actually wrote this is a bit confusing. It would take some untangling, so I've tried to do it for you. This is just from an email, and sometimes things get a little messed up without more editing than I apply. Sorry about that to my friend and to you. Anyway, evidently the machine Van Tassel's group developed still exists, and it fell into deep state hands. It enables the possessor to look into the future to see the outcome to which current trends will lead, if nothing too catastrophic happens to change the outcome. It is said that the elite, so-called, have used it to navigate, to help them make decisions. Time and again, they have done things that would lead to projected victory, according to the machine, only to watch in horror as the prognosis gradually changed over time and reversed, indicating they will suffer total defeat. The other side, including our off-planet cousins, would undermine and reverse the effect of everything they did. The net effect was ultimately that all their machinations being countered effectively merely ensured merely ensured their defeat by closing off every avenue leading to potential victory. And by now, I'm sure that must have happened, and they can't do anything that leads to more than a momentary prediction of victory. So I think what they were seeing was a pattern, something like, we've created a victory situation. And then over a period of months or perhaps a few years, it would shift, right? And then they would try something else. But over time, the periods when they were seeing victory in the future probably gradually decreased. So I don't know that they're seeing any victory, and the machine may have become useless to them. Now, some of this information is it's just a narrative. It's a story, okay? Now, I think the machine definitely exists. Van Tassel's group definitely made it, and it would have fallen into deep state hands. So the rest is just based on, I suppose, insider reports. But you could say it's apocryphal. You don't have to believe it. So anyway, the deep state were effectively and ingeniously led into a trap via the machine. That's a story that could have been fabricated by an imaginative person, but it fits the real course of events quite well. What do you think? I said, what do you think? I'm dropping here some of the details concerning the Time War, capital T, capital W, right? Which I have so named. It's my little innovation for my own, um, you know, for my own pleasure in labeling things. And I think it has been a much bigger deal than even the Galactic Federation of Worlds and Elena Danaan have so far indicated. Books will one day be written on the subject and so on. That's my opinion. So that I've dropped this information here so that you will recognize that there's a deep rabbit hole there of which intuition tells me I have barely scratched the surface so far. And then I talk about a certain series of talks that my friend and I have both paid considerable attention to over time, posted. We called it Mandela Effect Decoded. You can now find it on archive.org. And it's a series of about 60 to 65 hours of talks, quite a lengthy and detailed exposition. And I point out here that I have very carefully listened to the whole thing twice, and some talks 3 or more times. No doubt, if you have paid attention to that, you grok how big a deal the ME really was, Mandela Effect, and still is, with new Mandela effects continuing to emerge. I don't think the Mandela effect was or is solely or primarily due to the activity that John Lash, who originated that material about the Mandela effect, attributes to the superconsciousness of the Earth, whom he names Gaia Sophia. And, she is called by those names, Gaia or Sophia in the more common pronunciation, and so on, many other names. But the Gnostics and ancient pagans were very aware of this planetary psyche, planetary mind, planetary being, the Earth as an intelligent living organism. And of course, in modern times, the Gaia hypothesis, due to James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis, if I am pronouncing her name correctly, came about and became somewhat popular in some circles. So also I would mention, and while I'm expounding on that, the Pleiadians, the Galactic Federation, endorses the concept, although they have a little bit different spin on it. They just call it the planetary matrix, and they say that any planet that hosts a significant biosphere is going to have that, or even any biosphere at all. And it's different, it's a different individual from planet to planet. Although I said, who can say that none of it had anything to do with that sort of thing? Yeah. So Lash's idea is that our reality, the reality that in which we live our lives, is generated by this planetary superconsciousness. So therefore, if glitches or anomalies occur in the reality, uh, it's her doing essentially, because we don't have the capacity to affect those changes. Now, he doesn't take into account the idea that time travel and manipulation of timelines could occur, but he is aware that advanced technology is possessed by certain groups here on Earth. So my question to him would be, why not? Why couldn't they be whoever they are, the deep state, we call them on this channel, uh, because they're keeping this technology to themselves, right, and trying to use it for their own benefit. Well, why couldn't they be using this time manipulation technology to create a Mandela effect? The idea being that consciousness, our consciousness, it's in one timeline and then suddenly it's in another timeline. In other words, reality for us really does change. That's the idea. Although some are going to be more aware of it than others. Some may be subliminally aware, some are very sure. It used to be, you know, Chick-fil-A used to be spelled a different way or what have you. I mean, there are different Mandela effects. Um, So anyway, to me, given that I know of the Time War and other profound evidence uh, of it, in addition to the Mandela effect, I think the ME just heaps more corroborating evidence on the plate. In other words, it's evidence of timeline shifts, which I just explained. And those have been the result of timeline manipulations done ineptly by the deep state and countered very eptily, if you want to use that word, um, by the Galactic Federation of Worlds and the Earth Alliance. There probably have been some overtly offensive moves in that war by the good guys as well. Now, what I refer to as the Time War was merely, or has been merely, an important aspect of the Liberation War, and again, capital L, capital W, or the War for Terran Liberation, or the War for Earth's Liberation, the War for liberation of the Terra Who, Earthbound humanity. And this war has been mostly cold, but sometimes hot. That has been going on behind the scenes and below the overt awareness of the public for decades or longer. That war kicked into high gear when the Sakaar and Nebu, so the reptilians and the Greys, if you will, decided to target Earth for takeover and Terran humanity for extinction. The Galactic Federation of Worlds showed up physically to reveal what was happening to President Eisenhower about a year before the Sakaar-Nebu alliance approached his administration with their offers. Eisenhower favored the Galactic Federation of Worlds, but the Majestic 12 group made a treaty with the reptilians and greys that elements of the deep state enforced. In other words, they should not have had the authority to do that, and they didn't have the constitutional authority or the legal authority, but yet there was such power on their side, sponsoring them, let's say, that the treaty they crafted and signed stood, and overwhelmed or superseded the authority of the U.S. government. The or we could say the shadow government's activities overruled those of the overt government, the prima facie. Yeah, gee, I don't know. My Latin pronunciation probably is terrible, but anyway, the edifice that the American people saw and thought was the government, right? This is said to have provided the motivation for Eisenhower's famous warning concerning the military-industrial complex, which was his code for what we now call the deep state, including the MJ-12 group. Back to the Inuit elders. So I've brought in a lot of other information, but it's all relevant, right? So back to the Inuit elders. They are indeed detecting something, effects of the ascension wave, also known by various other names. The energies flooding into the solar system as it rises above the galactic ecliptic, so to speak, or the plane of um, most orbits in the galaxy. Now, the orbit of the solar system is slightly tilted. I mean, are you surprised, right? So, for or it wobbles, it fluctuates up and down. And so we're now rising above the plane of the galaxy and the majority of orbits, or maybe you could call it the attractor to which the slightly chaotic orbits of different star systems are attracted, and they keep returning and moving about that plane. So anyway, the energies coming from above the galactic plane are causing changes in the sun and the entire planetary system. I think the Inuit, being closer and more sensitive to nature and its rhythms and other characteristics than most Terrahu, most of us, are noticing but assigning some spurious interpretations to the resulting changes. So their understanding is limited, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not saying that they're stupid or they're primitive or whatever, but they're doing the best they can with the information, and they're not quite correct. That's okay, and neither are necessarily astronomers and astrophysicists. Anyway, someone whose work I loosely track via YouTube is the solar system weather expert, who also has metaphysical interests, Stefan Burns. I'll post a link to his channel. I don't need to know all the details Burns expounds to gain an overview level benefit from his channel and the ongoing changes that he covers, as well as to grok something of their significance, thanks to Stefan Burns. That noted, there will be no new Carrington event that will bring our fragile and vulnerable civilization to its knees, with all the catastrophic effects that such an event would entail. Now, how can I state that confidently? Right? That is a bullet, or a nuclear warhead missile might be a better description, or analogy, that we can be assured of dodging thanks to nothing other than GFW intervention. for which they have explicitly taken credit. Otherwise, I believe there would inevitably be a massive reset as a result of solar activity, the extent of which could be more severe than we care to imagine. So you can go off on a tangent about what that might do, right? And predict the disaster. So you can create your own plot for a disaster movie. And there's a reason why they haven't made a disaster movie out of that, I think. Um, I think Hollywood was told not to go there because it's in terms of if we were left to our own devices, it would be a very severe risk and it could cause havoc. I won't go into details, but it could cause really, really severe problems and billions of people to lose their lives. So there you go with a bundle of information that I'm pleased to have had brought to mind by your sharing about the Inuit so that I could share it, namely that bundle, that information with you. So there you go. And I put this on my channel, put this on YouTube, where it will be useful perhaps to the many, to more people, not just my one friend. So there you go. Am I giving some contribution to this topic? You know, I'm behind and below a lot of people, and I acknowledge that. Listen to Elena, listen to Danny Henderson, listen to Dr. Michael Sala, and listen to other people, and pay attention to the remote viewers like Bertie Jaworski, like the Future Forecasting Group, and others. Right? I mean, if you want to go into Farsight Institute, that's a matter of taste, you know. Um, and there are certainly others, right? I think remote viewing has a lot to teach us. Um, so that's all I'll say about that right now. But um, there are corroborations from remote viewing of certain things. For example, you can look up um, a future forecasting group video in which the group were tasked, and they are periodically tasked with things like this, of viewing the Atlantic space arc that military insider JP reported about to Dr. Sala. And he did some episodes on, well, he got quite a few episodes on space arcs. What are they? Well, they're very large spaceships, and they were left here a very long time ago. You know, many tens of thousands, in some cases, hundreds of thousands of years ago. And they're buried in various places or deep under the ocean. And if you listen to the right videos, you can get a partial listing of where they're located or a partial listing of them. So one is located in the Bermuda Triangle below at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. There's one, and these are just a few that I know of. There's one at Mount Fuji in Japan. There's one in the Ukraine. That's significant. And one at Mount Hermon, I believe, in Syria, which accounts for interest in that location by certain parties. One at Lake Vostok in Antarctica under the ice. One below the Nazca Plain in Peru. One in the Pacific Ocean. I know the Pacific is huge, so where exactly? I don't know. And there are others. There are others that I'm not recalling right now. And there's one located on the planet Neptune near the South Pole. So they're not just on Earth. They're on other planets of the solar system as well. But anyway, the Future Forecasting Group specifically remote viewed the one in the Atlantic Ocean that JP visited, and to which certain Mexican indigenous people gained access when others were not able to, which is an interesting story. The primitives got in there ahead of the advanced people, supposedly. I don't know how primitive they are because I was saying they were of indigenous ancestry, but they could be very well educated, of course. Not meaning to imply otherwise. So anyway, there's, as I said, a lot to be learned, and you can check out Bertie Jaworski's viewing of the New Jersey drones, which is very entertaining and educational about remote viewing and about the drones themselves. And she got some intel, which I believe in and I agree with, that so far has not been corroborated by anybody else, which is, it's a double-edged sword. You may ask, well, how do we know that her intel is good then if it's not corroborated by anyone? But on the other hand, you know, it's additional information to take into account. Now, you don't have to believe it 100%. And remote viewers who see things that are not corroborated are not going to insist that, yeah, it's exactly the way I saw it. And, you better believe it. They're not going to say that. But, you know, if it's somebody who's extremely experienced and they're very meticulous about the way they task themselves or are tasked with viewing targets or experiences, things to experience, things to check out. Well, very often they do prove to be validated. And Birdie, under her previous name, Prue Calabrese, became a global celebrity in a sense because her group predicted 9/11 2 years prior to the event. And they didn't know what they were looking at. And they didn't say, this and that is going to happen, and it happened exactly that way. But what they saw was two tall buildings and an airplane or a bomb with wings or something like that, this winged object flying into one of them and causing an explosion and fire and so on. And I don't know that they saw the buildings going down, but it was so accurate that after 9/11 happened, many people noted that they had published this information 2 years earlier. So it was a corroboration, wasn't it? So, all right, I've gone a little bit afield here, but I'm just saying, you know, these are first rank people coming up with either data that is original to them, in a sense, although of course, contactees say it was given to me by my off-world contacts, whoever they might be, or I have information based on my experiences with ETs, meeting with them face to face, talking with them, or merely observing them. And then you have people like Dr. Sala, who is more of a compiler of information and a connector of the dots, so to speak. Um, and his work is extremely valuable as well. I'm not trying to compete with him. I'm trying to supplement what the contactees are doing, what Dr. Sala is doing, and what some of the more famous people. I'm not famous at all, and maybe I never will be. Who knows, right? But I'm trying to share with you what stands out to me at a given moment in time, and my own connecting of the dots as I learn. And we're all doing that, right? Even the people who are the smartest and the most experienced in this field of study, and that's what it is, right? Or intel gathering, if you want to call it that. We're all doing the best we can to progressively learn and to put the pieces together and to consider what does it mean for us and what does it mean for the Terra as a whole. And you could call us, I like to call us earthbound humanity or Terran humanity. And we're not really earthbound, right? But we had an earthbound origin. And there are lots of us out there in space now, believe it or not. But we're not supposed to know about that, so never mind. Okay. Well, that's all I have for this time, and I hope it was helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed it. Um, and I'm working towards having some panel discussions here. That's step one, and then later we'll move on to additional steps when we get more viewers to the channel and more subscribers and so on. I saw an interview with Elena Danan on Rumble, and there was not a lot of evidence of great participation, right? But the host said we are viewed by about 1 million people every month. There's about 1 million views to their videos every month. And they were told that by Dr. Greer, whom they wanted to interview, that it wasn't enough. But Elena was courteous enough and kind enough to grace their estimable channel with an interview. So one day I hope to interview her. I hope to talk to Danny Henderson and some of these other people whom I follow. I mean, I follow the information they're putting out. I appreciate them. I grant them a certain amount of adulation. They're marvelous, intelligent, brave, loving people, right? So, and I want to recognize that very explicitly. Explicitly, sorry. Sometimes the voice drops off. All right, so on that note, I will bid you adieu and hope to see you again very soon. Bye for now.